If you are a swimmer, if you love being outdoors at the beach in the sun, if you are the parent of somebody who spends a lot of time in any aquatic sport, or if you do any aquatic sport or spend any time outdoors in the sun, in the water, especially during the summertime, you want to be sure to catch this episode of Your Hair Made Simple. Today, I'm sharing a workshop that I did with My Own Lane Aquatics on how Black and Brown individuals can better care for their hair while they are swimming, navigating the pool, navigating the salt water in the sun, the sand surf sun. So, catch today's episode, tap in, share what you think in the comments. And of course, it's sponsored by our Nourishing Hair products, our Nourishing Hair Butter, and our Nourishing Hair Oil, formulated with mango butter and aloe vera to be safe for swimmers, to safe for those who need lightweight, moisturizing, and nourishing products. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and smash the like button. Think on these few questions. Why is scalp care essential to hair health? We're talking about our hair, but we're also here to talk about our scalps. Think about how you manage your hair and your scalp throughout the week. And think about maybe some times where you feel like your hair might be a little bit irritated or your scalp might be irritated, or like times where you've gone and you felt like your hair was amazing throughout the whole week, or any differences when you don't do your routine. So those are some considerations as we're going to be talking through, or if you even have a routine, right? Because this can also be a good starting ground to build one that's going to work well while you're also navigating being in the water, swimming, and all of those fun things. So let's get into the life of a swimmer, which I'm sure you guys could tell me better, but y'all are in the water a lot. So there's regular exposure to a couple of different things, right? You're exposed to either chlorine or salt water, depending on where you're swimming, how often you're swimming, if you're swimming outdoors, right? It's still kind of warm here where I am. So swimming in the summer, the sun has UV rays, right? We're outside, there's constant changes between our hair getting wet, our hair getting dry. Maybe we're wearing swim caps, maybe sometimes we're not, right? And so all of these different things, even the tools that y'all are using, swim caps, goggles, things to help really protect your hair, but are also just adding some friction when you're in the pool, when you're caring for your hair. And this is at least once, maybe to multiple times a week, depending on how often that you're swimming. So these can just show up and impact our hair in different ways, depending on how often we're exposed to chlorine and salt water. Those things can just be a bit more drying to our hair, drying to our strands, and drying to our scalps. The sun, we talk about heat damage sometimes from flat irons and all these other tools, but the sun can also sometimes damage our hair when we're overexposed to it while our hair is also dry, right? And so having the sun combined with exposure to chlorine, sometimes that can weaken our hair strands or even change its color. And then just the constant wetness and dryness, right? Like just having to manage the different textures that comes with that. So we're going to talk a little bit today about signs that you can recognize, different things that may come up, and then what are some routines and products and tools and resources that you can be using in your natural hair journey. So let's first talk about our natural hair, because before we talk about how to care for it, it's really important to understand the different assets, the different facets that make our hair unique, especially for our natural hair, and then understand how us being in the water, how us having those exposures to chlorine and sun and all those things impacts these natural dynamics of our hair strands. So every single one of us has unique hair factors, has unique hair strands. Even though we may see people with similar hairstyles, types, and textures, we all have unique factors to consider. And so I'm just going to go through a couple of them with you guys before we jump into the hair care maintenance process. The first couple are being like elasticity. So we know that we have curls, we have coils, we have waves, and how they stretch when we pull them and bounce back, right? That's the elasticity of our hair. So sometimes we might see our base level, knowing just if our hair stretches and bounces back, whatever that looks like for you, but understanding what your kind of main level is for how much your hair stretches and expands and the shapes of your curls. We have our curl patterns. Some people, they may have really wavy hair. Some people may have ringlets. Some folks in the world have straight hair, right? Some people have Z-shaped patterns. So there's all these different shapes that our curls can take, and you can have multiple shapes of curls in your head, shapes of curls, shapes of coils, kinks, all of those things. A lot of times with our hair being naturally curlier, coilier, wavier, that makes our hair a little bit more fragile, right? Because of just the shape that they take, it could be a bit more prone to dryness. So our hair can be a bit more prone to dryness, and we're already in pools and things that are potentially going to make our hair a little bit drier. And then there's density. So just how much hair do you actually have on your head, right? Like think about the actual amount of strands that you have on your hair. So some people's hair can be kind of thin. Some people's hair might be really thick and full. Whatever it is for you, that's just saying, letting you know like how you'll have to work products into your scalp, right? Sometimes if you have a lot of really thick, dense hair, it can take a bit more work to get in there to clean some things but that can also mean that the chlorine, some of those things can be sticking in your hair a little bit longer, right? Versus if your hair is maybe a bit thinner, it might be easier to rinse some of the products out, cleanse your hair more regularly. And then the last one I'm going to just touch on is porosity, but it's how well your hair absorbs and retains moisture. So some people can have high porosity hair, which means your hair gets wet really quickly, but it dries just as fast. So then on the other end of that, we have low porosity hair. So it takes a while for your hair to get wet, but once it absorbs, things really kind of sit in there, right? So knowing where you fall on these spectrums is important because it lets you know, is it more likely that chlorine is going to be sitting in my hair after I spend time in the pool? Is it more likely that I'm going to have a lot of product buildup? How often do I need to be washing? So these are some things to just think about and consider, right? And then potential irritants to our hair, stress, seasonal changes. We're going from summer to fall, exposure to potential chemicals, the things that we're navigating in the pool. So all of these things are coming into play in our hair journey as we're also navigating swimming, right? And so it can sound like a lot, but when we know what to look for, then we can also know how to treat. So we're going to get into how some of these different considerations for what y'all are experiencing when you're navigating swimming can show up on your scalp and can show up on your hair individually, and then how you can build a routine to just better manage and care for them and mitigate some of these concerns. But the concerns that you might see showing up from all those different properties, scalp concerns, right? Especially if your scalp is being exposed to the water, to the chlorine, it can potentially cause irritation, dryness, flaking, maybe even sunburn in your scalp because our scalp is really just skin that is on our head. And I know that sounds very simple, but if it can happen to your skin, on your hands, or anywhere else on your body, it can likely happen on your scalp. And we often don't think about it because it's covered by our hair, but it's really important to make that connection, right? So the dryness, the flaking, sometimes if we see dandruff or if we see an excessive reproduction of dandruff and flaking from the dryness, right? Because of the chemicals that we're coming into contact with, or even just the overexposure to the outdoors along with water. With our hair, depending on what we're navigating or how frequently we're caring for it, we can see potentially dryness or brittleness or loss of that elasticity. So loss of our curl's ability to revert to its natural form, or even breakage. So split ends, breaking off at the ends, breaking off maybe where your swim cap, is like touching the ends of your hair, touching certain areas of your hair. And even for chemically treated hair, if your hair is straight or if it's permed, um, they're definitely more susceptible because we're already adding chemicals from perms, and then we're adding the chemicals from the pool, the damage from the sun. So it can see some of these other things at a more extreme or at a more rapid rate than natural hair care would see it, but can definitely be reactive in these ways. So for our scalp, the dryness and irritation, oftentimes this is caused because the chlorine in our pools is stripping our scalp's natural oils. So your scalp naturally produces oils, but the chlorine in the pools can oftentimes take away the oils, take away the things that are made to naturally keep your scalp healthy and moisturized. So then we see that the skin on our scalp, which is called a scalp barrier, is often disrupted. And that's what leads to the flaking, the dandruff, or even just itchiness. Like if you feel like you're itchy after you've had your scalp exposed in the pool. Sometimes this can also show up if we're seeing sunburn from being the sun, or maybe even chemical irritation from a combination of the sun and maybe having really sensitive skin and not reacting well to the pool chemicals. But that can show up as redness or tenderness or itchiness or bumpy spots. If you're navigating eczema, right, or just other flare-ups on the scalp, that can mean that there's buildup or bacteria that's trapped on the scalp, and helping to just exacerbate some of that irritation that we see. So when we think about these signs, the redness, the itchiness, bumps, sores, or dry, flaky patches or rashes, right, that we see, The goal with our scalp is to really make sure that we are cleansing our scalp regularly, once a week at minimum, right? And so cleansing our scalp, getting rid of the chlorine, getting rid of the chemicals that we're exposing it to, and also resetting our hair, but then making sure that we're adding moisture back in. Cleansing and moisturizing are going to be the two things that you are going to want to make sure that you do, and then creating protective barriers for your hair when you are in the water. So potential remedies that you could explore using for scalp care, we have apple cider vinegar rinses. So just taking some water, some apple cider vinegar, it's a natural remedy for exfoliating your scalp, and using that in addition to a clarifying shampoo, but to really just work out some of that extra chlorine that you're seeing, the extra chemicals that you're getting when you come into contact with swimming. Using aloe vera, you can buy an aloe vera leaf from the store, you can buy aloe vera gel, you can buy aloe vera juice, but aloe is something that is very soothing to our scalps. It has a lot of healing properties. You can use it on your regular skin as well. But after cleansing, when you're thinking about how to moisturize your hair, using products that are aloe based to do a mask to just reset your scalp, because it's already having its natural oil stripped, you want to make sure that you're adding moisture back in. And in addition to that, you can also do hot oil treatments. And this is different than putting oil on your scalp every day, but taking some oil, it can be olive oil, jojoba oil, grapeseed oil. There's lots of different products that are helpful for you. Adding peppermint oil and just heating it up, not until it's scalding hot, but letting it be warm, and doing a 10 to 15-minute mask. Those are some preventative and post-swim remedies that you can be applying to help just reset your scalp, to cleanse it, and then to add moisture back in. And it is important to note that if you are caring for your hair, if you're applying some of these remedies and you're still seeing scalp conditions persisting, right? I always want to point you to a dermatologist, because there are also professionals that can help if you see things being exacerbated outside of normal dandruff or irritants or itchiness or redness, right? Like if you're seeing extreme flakes, extreme scabbing, things that are not reverting after you apply these things, that's when you would want to bring somebody in and consult them. But for regular care and maintenance, really utilizing cleansing shampoos, cleansing treatments like apple cider vinegars, and applying them directly to the scalp and working them in, and then using ingredients like aloe vera or hot oil treatments to help with resetting your scalp before you go into the deep conditioning and the rest of your hair routine. When it comes to your actual hair, right, because our scalp is one part, we always want to be monitoring if we see irritation, if we feel itchy. Those are signs like we need to wash it and reset it. But when it comes to our actual hair, we can also see different impacts from the chlorine, from the sun, from all those different factors as well. So when it comes to the chlorine, sometimes we can see that it breaks down the protein in our hair essentially. So your hair might show up as limper, your curls might not, revert back because of the chlorine that's impacting the protein in your hair. The sun exposure can also be another thing that causes loss of the protein that helps to build up our hair. And that ultimately can show up also in your hair changing color. So sun bleaching is a thing that can be experienced. You can experience that without being a swimmer, but especially if your hair is drier because of being in the pool more often, you're not moisturizing it, and you're seeing exposure to the sun. You may notice if your hair is really dark, it starts to become a lighter brown color, or things like that. And so those are things to monitor, because that means that there's probably some protein breakdown happening in your hair that's essentially changing how your curls are shaped. It's breaking down the shape of your hair. And you would want to be mindful to do some protein treatments or be more washing it more regularly and repairing in that way. So the signs of irritation that you can look for, right? If you are experiencing some damage to your hair, it's dullness in the color. So if your hair is, typically shiny, like, and you see it kind of looking dull or having a rough texture, so it feels like straw, or it feels like very just dry to the touch. If you notice that your hair is shedding more frequently, if you notice split ends, if you look at an individual strand of your hair and at the end you see it's pulling off into two separate strands and working its way up the shaft, right? Those are signs that your hair is experiencing damage and friction, or if your curls are just getting limp. And sometimes limp curls can also be a sign of an over intake of water, right? So when you're in the water, often our hair absorbs moisture, right? We talked about the high porosity, the moisture goes in and out. We talked about the low porosity. Once it gets in there, it stays in there. And so sometimes additional moisture can be weighing our hair down, so we can see our curls feeling limp. So things that we want to think about when we're navigating these concerns with our hair, right? For the limp curls, really applying those clarifying treatments, like cleansing out, and you want to be mindful of the extra moisture that's being absorbed. When you're getting into the pool, thinking about what are barrier layers. So essentially like protectant layers that you can apply over your hair, products that you can consider before getting in the water that would coat your strands essentially and add an extra layer of moisture to minimize combat some of the dryness that you're going to be experiencing from the chlorine, from the water, from the sun. So putting a layer of leave-in conditioner, putting a natural oil like a grapeseed oil or jojoba oil over your hair, using shampoo weekly to remove the chlorine, right? Like your routine is going to be more frequent because you're coming into contact with chemicals more frequently. Using a deep moisturizer as well as a protein treatment. So there are conditioners that are specifically formulated with protein, especially if you are seeing, the rough textures, the breakage, the split ends, or if you're seeing some of the color changes, right, from damage that are signs of protein breakdowns. Using a protein treatment or a protein deep conditioner can help to rebuild your hair back up. And then, of course, in the even tools we're using things that are going to be more gentle on our hair. Our hair is experiencing so much friction already in the pools, but using maybe microfiber towels or an old t-shirt, right? An old cotton t-shirt or air drying to just reduce how much friction we're causing our hair and to minimize breakage are some of the things that we can do to manage our hair against these irritants that we would see. Extra special consideration, because I know that a lot of times when we're in the water, sometimes we just want to put our hair away, right? We want to put it in a protective style. We want to put it up in braids so that way we don't have to do too much. But protective styles, while they may keep their hair away, they do still require maintenance when you're in the water, right? The same things that can happen to your hair, and having exposure to chlorine, having that exposure to the water, that can also still happen in these protective styles, right? And so it's important to keep them cleansed as well, because the longer we go without caring for our braids or caring for our scalp while it's for twists, while it's in these styles, we're just allowing buildup of those chemicals. Considering that chlorine buildup and chemicals can be trapped at the base of our braids, the base of our twists. And so then we have these chemicals and these ingredients just sitting on our scalp. And sometimes they might get in and it's also a little bit harder to cleanse, right? Then there's the risk of odor and mildew if we're letting some of these chemicals sit in our hair, if we're not drying our braids out fully, and then being mindful of how we're getting our braids, right? If we are getting our braids and the tension is too tight, and then we have swim caps or other things that are pulling on them, we just want to be mindful that we are not pulling our hair out while trying to protect it. So being mindful for if we see our edges starting to thin out, if our hair feels too tight when you get it done, if you feel like you're getting a headache, that is often a sign. I know we want to like see it crisp and clean, but there is a difference between our styles being clean and them pulling our edges out because our hair is really sensitive. And then if we see like odors are flaking, right, then there's probably chlorine buildup or potentially mold or mildew risk, right, if we're not letting our hair get dry all the way in these styles once we come out of the water. So with our braids, it's important to consider like one, applying moisturizing spray because we don't want our hair to get dry while it's in the braids, but also cleaning and conditioning your hair while you have your protective styles in. So doing conditioning rinses, finding clarifying shampoos. You almost want to really care for it in the same ways as you're caring for your hair. And when you're shampooing, you can only shampoo the scalp, let water rinse through your braids, do conditioner masks on your scalp and let them rinse through the braids. But really having a cleansing and clarifying routine just as much because your hair is going to be in these styles for longer, and we don't want the chemicals and the ingredients to be sitting in these styles for extended periods of time to potentially cause more breakage when you take your hair out instead of seeing the protection that you're looking for. So putting all of this information together, right? Because we've talked about our scalp, we've talked about our hair, we've talked about if we have braids, our protective styles. What does this look like to have a regular routine? What does this look like for you to, build out your routine? And so for you, your regular routine should really consist of a few different key factors. So cleansing your scalp. And I will even say before cleansing your scalp, doing some of the pre-maintenance. So the hot oil treatments that we talked about, the aloe vera mask that we talked about, those things can be pre-treatments before you shampoo to just help to reset your hair from all of the water, all of the things that you're navigating, right? But then cleansing your scalp. So using an apple cider vinegar rinse and a clarifying shampoo, having a regular conditioner that you're using to detangle and to reset, and a deep conditioner as well, right? And that can be one with protein or one without protein. You can integrate them. Maybe 1 month you do a protein deep conditioner, the next month you do one without protein, but making sure that you're rebuilding your strands, especially if you're seeing them be limp, if you're seeing them be dry, if you're seeing your hair, start to lose the shape of its curls, having those deep conditioner treatments to be the repairing agents that you need them to be for your hair. And then when it comes to styling, when we're thinking about the ingredients that we're using to style, we want to use ingredients that are going to minimize our product buildup, but still add maximum moisture. So you'll have a leave-in conditioner, but maybe consider, instead of ones that are heavier creams, maybe you want to use one that's a lighter formula, maybe a spray on, or they have hair milks versus like leave-ins, right? Hair milks are a little bit lighter in their formulas, but leave-in conditioners that are going to be lightweight, but are formulated with things like aloe vera, things like mango butter, things that are going to make sure that they're moisturizing your hair. And then either using a leave-in and an oil and a cream, or a cream and an oil, depending on which method works for your hair, or really just a styling agent that's going to hydrate and add moisture into your hair, right? And then considering the protective styles that you're doing to hold moisture in. So really doing and nourishment rich products to help just combat, right? Because you need to have your protective agents to work against what you're going to be experiencing through the pools. And then once you have your styling done, considering your scalp care. So in it, like a lot of times we just focus on oiling our scalp, but misting your scalp with your leave-in conditioner, right? Oils are helpful sealants, but water is what hydrates, right? And so water-based leave-ins, or even just massaging your scalp with some water and then massaging an oil on top of that every couple of days, but just preventing the dryness that we can see. And when it comes to your swim days, right, depending on what style you have your hair in, especially if your hair is out, right, but if you're going to coat it with the leave-in conditioner or coat it with some strands, or even just like maybe coat it with a fresh oil, like a grapeseed oil, coat it with something that's going to protect your hair before you get in the water. And then if your hair is out, like doing a cold rinse or rinsing things out and applying a gentle cleanser immediately. If your hair is in a protective style, maybe like every 1 to 2 swims, right? But like really cleansing it more frequently, getting at least cool water rinses in there and drying them out to be sure that you're ridding yourself of the chlorine, of the chemicals that you're going to be just naturally exposed to by the nature of the sport. And so doing this routine, doing your full routine weekly, right? And then at least midweek having some refreshes and resets. So every week, you're going to need to be shampooing, you're going to need to be cleansing, you're going to need to be resetting your conditioner. And then at least midweek, that should be a checkpoint. See how your hair is feeling, and then you can know if you need to do more or less. But rehydrating, spraying that leave-in conditioner mist or whatever that is, massaging some water and then some oil into your hair and your scalp is going to just help to add protective barriers along the way throughout the week as you are swimming. When it comes to long-term maintenance, right? Because sometimes you're just going to see your ends need to be trimmed. That happens without being a swimmer or with being a swimmer. So long-term maintenance, there are some other things that we can add in that don't need to be done weekly, but we do need to be mindful of having them done to make sure that we are caring for our hair. So getting your ends trimmed, this is extremely important. I would say if you're seeing breakage and you're prone to breakage, being more mindful of that, but getting your ends trimmed with a professional or with professional shears, because once you see split ends, there are bond treatments and things like that that you can use. But if you don't treat split ends or if you don't treat breakage, it's just going to work its way up your hair. And so you can trim it sooner or you can get a bigger cut later, right? So trims just help to keep our hair maintenance. They help to make sure that we're cutting off the damaged hair so that our hair that is alive and healthy can thrive and grow more healthy hair. Then we talked about protein conditioners, either monthly or bi-monthly. If you're seeing your hair start to become limp, if you're seeing maybe your hair color change from sun exposure, adding protein in to just strengthen your hair strands can be something that is important. And when you're doing a conditioner treatment, I'm adding in steam treatment. So it's a regular deep conditioner, regular things, but adding steam to it, hot air and heat opens our hair shafts up to really be able to absorb that moisture. You can find a heat cap and do that at home. You can get a shower cap and put your deep conditioner in and maybe sit under a blow dryer if you have one. If you want to just steam in the shower a little bit, there's all types of options, but steam helps to open our hair up to get the moisture in. That's going to be so, so important. And then just making sure that you're doing the clarifying actions throughout to be mindful of how you're caring for your scalp and applying these remedies. Tools for maintaining your hair, because we've talked about the process, the shampooing and the conditioning, but the tools that we use in doing all these things when we're showing up to swim, they matter just as much as what we are using, because our hair is already very sensitive. We have our curls, we have our coils, and so we want to be mindful of how much friction we are putting on them in addition to what they're already going to experience in the world. So in terms of detangling, right? Because we want to make sure that our hair is not getting matted from being in the water. So we want to be detangling it regularly. There are many different brushes and combs that you can use. It's finding the one that works best for you. The Denman brush, has a detangler brush. There's the Unbrush, there's Tangle Tamers, and these are all names of products you can find in your beauty supply. You can use a regular wide tooth comb, right? But making sure that you are using things that are going to move with the flow of your hair. So instead of like snapping your hair off, right? So brushes where they have the tendrils that will move with your hair, they're separating it, they're detangling it, but they're not just breaking your hair off, is going to be really important to make sure that you're just maintaining the integrity of your hair and your strands. When it comes to drying our hair, right? Sometimes regular towels, the fibers in them can snatch and pull on our hair as well. So using old cotton t-shirts or microfiber towels that can just be sensitive and smoothing on our hair instead of pulling at our strands and creating that extra frizz and friction. When it comes to even sleeping on your hair, satin pillowcases, satin bonnets, satin lined caps, right? Things that are going to just minimize the friction in our hair and to keep it smooth when we're in our shower. Wearing shower caps, right? And I know it sounds kind of maybe counterintuitive, but some folks don't wear them. But if you want to protect your hair from over moisture, right? Like once you've done it, once you've styled it, wear your shower caps unless you're planning to wash it or if you want the steam for a volume or a style. And then using a scalp exfoliator brush, something that's going to be small, handheld, and just allow you to work products into the scalp to make sure that you are best cleansing it. And in general, for maintenance, satin lined scrunchies or bands are going to be best just to like minimize when we're wearing ponytails, when we're styling it, we don't want to see breakage from the things that we're using to style our hair. And then lastly, for swim gear, thinking about Black-owned swim brands that have been designed to make swim caps that fit all of our hair, that fit our protective styles and braids. So there is Hairbrella, is Soul Cap and Swimma Caps as three brands that you can look into if you need those additional layers. And I know Tanika does a great job of having those resources and supports for you all. So then when it comes to the products that we're using, if you're looking for products to support healthy swimmers' hair, your Hair Made Simple does have a nourishing hair butter and oil formulated with mango butter and aloe vera and grapeseed oil and all of those things because we're formulating for those with sensitive skin who are dealing with allergens and irritants or may come into combat with them and need to reset their hair from them and want a safe, moisturizing, and gentle product. So our nourishing hair butter has mango butter, aloe vera, and grapeseed oil. It makes it lightweight for doing your twists, doing your protective styles, while also minimizing the buildup that can then exacerbate from the pool. And our nourishing hair oil is also lightweight and formulated with rosemary, which is great for stimulating the scalp and also helping to cleanse and reset our scalps after we've come into combat with irritant. So those are our brands, the products that we have, which I'll have a QR code at the end that you can scan if you're interested. And also other brands that I love because we have a hair butter and oil and you need a full scare lineup and routine. So brands that are formulating for healthy natural hair, for sensitive skin, plant-made, they have shampoo and conditioner bars that you can use. And so you can really work them right into the scalp. And they're formulating with natural oils as well. Alafia has a lot of gentle moisturizers. Camille Rose, Meal Organics, and Briogeo also have sensitive skin lines, which may be something to look into because you want to minimize the amount of irritants, especially because you're already in the pool. So these are some brands that I love that I personally trust in addition to my own. You can use your Hair Made Simple's products in complement with some of these other brands to really build out a holistic, healthy hair care routine for you guys to see your best success in your hair journeys as you're also seeing your best success in your swim journeys as well. So I have a challenge for you this week before I leave you all to take note of how you manage your scalp and how you manage your hair throughout the week and any potential routine updates or changes that you need to make. And so I know at the beginning I gave you some questions. So hopefully you've been thinking about this already and reflecting on this. But as you go throughout this upcoming week, as you go throughout your time in the pool, observe your hair, observe when it feels itchy, if it feels scratchy, if you see any friction or tension, and which one of these things you might want to apply. Maybe you don't need to apply everything. Maybe you might just need to start clarifying more and shampooing more and cleansing your hair. Maybe you need to build out a new routine, but take note and establish what change you want to make first, and just start with one thing and then continue to build and to grow from there. And so that is what I have for you guys today about caring for your natural hair while swimming. If you are interested in learning more about your Hair Made Simple, we have our podcast where we interview folks on their natural hair journeys, people from dermatologists to cosmetologists, to best share our stories, find encouragement, and share information and resources. We have our Nourishing Hair Butter and Oil products and workshops like this. So you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Your Hair Made Simple, and you can scan the QR code and it will take you to all of our different places, our podcast, the links to our Nourishing Hair products, and our social media. So with that being said, I will turn it over if we have any questions. I believe we're going to do a little Q&A segment. So you let me know how we want to flow.
Shannon, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can? Right. So I'm going to turn it over to someone asking a question right now.
Awesome. So excited.
So you mentioned about the clarifying scalp treatments and stuff. I just didn't hear, how often did you recommend doing that for a swimmer that's swimming like one or twice a week?
Yeah. So I would say if you're swimming once or twice a week, I think the clarifying shampoo, I would recommend that as maybe I would start off bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks, like if you have a regular shampoo that you're already using, I would try the Clarify treatment every 2 weeks and see how your hair reacts to that, just so you can notice a difference, right? Because when you're introducing anything new, it's important to give room to see kind of the difference. And so if you find that your hair is responding really well, because clarifying shampoos can be really, they can, because they're made to clean and like get extra stuff out, they can potentially be drying, but I would start with every 2 weeks, see how your scalp is reacting to that because it might just really need that type of cleansing. And then if you feel like it's doing really well, then I would say like every week maybe. So I would say a week to 2 weeks though, just depending on how you see your scalp responding to it and see your hair responding to it in the pool.
Okay, and then a follow-up question is that you had talked about moisturizing with peppermint oil or tea tree oil, I think. And how often did you recommend that as well? Is that like before every swim? Once again, one time a week or twice a week? What was that?
No. Great question. So with moisturizing, and I appreciate you asking this because I want to clarify. So peppermint oils and tea tree oils, they are helpful because tea tree oil has antibacterial properties and peppermint oil helps to stimulate the scalp. But I do not recommend putting those directly on your scalp, like not just peppermint oil or just tea tree oil because they're essential oils. And so those can be irritants as well. So I would dilute them with a grapeseed oil. So maybe like a grapeseed oil or an olive oil that you have or jojoba oil, take one of those because those are more moisturizing oils and put a couple of drops of each of those into your main oil, a couple of drops of peppermint and tea tree into the main grapeseed oil because those oils are really strong. And once you put the peppermint and tea tree in, you will smell them. And then I would say doing a hot oil mask to start. I would say that could be a once a week thing before you shampoo. That could be something to help fortify and reset your hair. And then if you're coating your hair in oils, depending on how you're wearing your hair, you could do a lightweight just coat of oil, like just the oil massage over your strands before you get in the pool. Possibly like every time, as long as it's lightweight oils and it's not too heavy. I don't want you drenching your hair in oils, right? But just enough to massage and give a nice layer to kind of coat. And you just want to really be creating some type of protective barrier over your hair before you're getting into the water. So the hot oil treatment, you could do that weekly. You could do that before you shampoo, condition, and do your whole routine. I do those, and I'm not a swimmer, and I do either a hot oil treatment or an aloe mask pretty much every time I do my hair, which is around every 2 weeks. Even if I was to do it weekly, I would add it in. And then for just like a quick, I'm about to go to the pool, just you don't need to do a hot oil treatment, just take an oil and do a coat, do a barrier before you head out to the pool. I hope that helps.
Do you have any more questions for Shannon? Shannon, thank you so much. We're getting ready to transition to the water. I appreciate you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys have fun in the water. Have an amazing rest of your day. And if you have any questions, you can reach out and contact me at any of these avenues above.
Thank you again, Shannon.
Thanks. Bye, guys.